Well, hello again everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of This and That. I was doing some Christmas shopping like you do on Amazon and stuff like that, and I spent a few pounds on my relatives, and I was so miserable after that I needed to go and do some retail therapy of my own. So here it is. I went out and on RS and Farnell and Amazon and bought myself lots of things. So for me it's kind of a pre-Christmas present, so here we are. First of all, got some more of these little aluminium boxes from RS. For those playing along at home, the serial number is 3439861. I think these are about £3.50 each, which I don't think is bad. So just a few weeks ago I made these little impedance matching pads. This is a 50 to 75 ohm, and it's actually got a name of the company there. It looks like Guelph, Ontario. But these little aluminium boxes, they're die cast, and they're ideal because they take a BNC connector like this. They're also big enough on this end if you want to put an N-type connector, which we do a lot for RF work. And yeah, they're just really sturdy, and they're not too expensive. As I said, I think they're about £3 each, which is fairly cheap for a little metal box these days, and I quite like them. So there you go, aluminium boxes from RS. So I decided to treat myself to another solder sucker. I didn't really need it. Again, I was on Amazon, and you know how they predict what your needs are, and it predicted that I need, based on my previous buying history, it predicted I needed a new solder sucker. And you know how much I hate this pace unit I've got. Now, I don't expect this will actually be even as good as the pace unit, but I did have a look at a couple of reviews after I bought it, and they seem okay, so let's have a look at it. Now, one of the reasons that I bought this is that it's got a bit of an unusual nozzle on it, in that that's what caught my eye, in that it uses a piece of silicone rubber. So hopefully you can see that. Can you see that? There's just a little bit of silicone rubber tubing on the end. Let me just bring you in. Well, I don't know about you, I've had lots of solder suckers in the past, and one thing that wears on them and gets annoying is the tips fail. In fact, let's go and get another solder sucker out of my drawer. I'm sure I've got lots of them. So here's my trusty RS solder sucker. I'm going to call it an RS solder sucker because I think that's where I bought it from. I've had this years and years. So I think the tips on these, they're made out of a variety of materials. I think some of the really good ones, the white ones, are made out of Teflon, I think. And I think they might also use PTFE. I'm not exactly sure. So the problem with these is that as you are using them, the tip starts to kind of melt and deform, and it actually shrinks back. And as it shrinks back, the hole seems to get bigger and bigger, and you know, the gap around your component leg and the solder that you're trying to remove gets bigger, and I think that reduces the vacuum, and eventually they kind of stop working. And these tips are, I'm going to say they're quite expensive. I can't remember what they are, but I think they might be £4 or £5 each. They are quite dear. I seem to think if you're a bit more prepared, you can buy a job lot on eBay fairly cheaply, but you know, when you're buying stuff on eBay, it's always a little bit of a mixed bag what actually turns up. So that's the old solder sucker I've had for many years, and it kind of works. But this one caught my eye. Again, it appears to be all aluminium construction, and it did get some quite good reviews. It looks like I've seen another one come from Japan, because it does say made in Japan, and they normally make good stuff, don't they? I've seen another solder sucker that looks a lot like this, and I'm wondering, is this the one I originally saw, or is this like a knockoff of it? Oh, that's very quick. I think it's got a better vacuum on than my old one. Yeah, my old one kind of does suck quickly, but this one actually still maintains a vacuum. But then again, it's brand new, isn't it? Yeah, the only thing wrong with these, and you might not be able to see it on camera, but when you actually you know, depress the trigger on it and it fires, you get recoil on it, and the action of the solder sucker, it actually bangs towards the board, which you could say maybe it helps form a seal, but it can actually damage the board. It's maybe quite good that this is soft. These are actually really hard, the tips on here, and when I've been desoldering, that combination of heat and maybe that mechanical shock where the effectively the tip bounces off your board like that, it's not uncommon to damage pads, and you know, you can knock pads off. So I wonder if this will be any better, although the recoil does feel quite severe on it, but it is much softer. Let's see how it works. So I think the selling point for me was the fact that it has this piece of silicone tubing that it uses as a nozzle. I don't know if that'll be actually any good or not, but the idea, I guess, is that it's soft, and when you damage it, you can just basically pull the bit of silicone off, and it comes with a piece of silicone tubing. You can buy silicone tubing anywhere. You just put a new piece of silicone tubing on, and off you go again. And I'm guessing because it's silicone tubing, it must be proof to quite high temperatures. Oh, that's a good little test we can just do. So let's plug the soldering iron in and see if it melts easily. So at the moment I've got my soldering iron set to 380 degrees, which for what I do is on the hot side. I do tend to run with quite a hot soldering iron because rather than messing about and taking my time, I like to get in and get out quickly without fanning around. So I do tend to run with a hot iron, but probably 380 is at the hotter end of anything I'm ever going to do. So as a quick test, let's just try the silicone tubing directly on the end of my soldering iron, which is at 380 degrees. Okay, well at that temperature the silicone tubing I think is smoking. Well, maybe it's just the soldering iron that's smoking. Just trying to see, has that expanded? Yeah, I think the effect of my soldering iron has actually expanded the piece of silicone rubber a little bit. It's still actually quite hot, that, but I wouldn't say it's melted it. So yeah, so silicone tubing seems to be good for 380 degrees. So let's just try the same heat test on my old solder sucker tip. Yeah, certainly I don't think that has any problems standing up to 380 degrees. I don't think that's doing anything. Yeah, so this new solder sucker almost goes with a little bit of an explosion when you press the button, but I guess it has got a brand new spring in. Yeah, my old green one does feel a bit slower. Whether that'll affect the desoldering, I've got no idea. Now it does appear that this silicone tubing, the diameter of it is actually larger than my old desoldering iron tip there. I would actually say it's well, I might even say that the old one is about half the size. The tube is like half the diameter. Anyway, the question is, how well does it work? Let's try it. What can we desolder on here? I think I want to remove these. I've got these 10k pots on here. Are they 10k? 5k pots. I want to remove them anyway, so let's try that. So, heating that up. Did something. Job's a good one, didn't have any problem with that. Just for comparison, I'm just going to try my old solder sucker, see if that makes any difference, if it's any better. Well, it failed. Oh, did it fail? Maybe it didn't. I was going to say that failed. Okay, well, there was not a lot of difference there. They both felt about the same. Let me try another connection. Got a great big blob of solder here. Let's try this huge blob of solder. Ah, see, that actually had a little fail already there. So our brand new tip, has that failed already? Have we had a fail? I think we could have had a fail. We have had a fail. So when I was expelling the old solder, it's actually cut through the piece of silicone rubber. It's knackered it. But of course the advantage is, even though we've damaged one tip, I just need to take another piece of silicone rubber and cut it. And hopefully we should have that should give us a new tip. So here's a new tip. But I really would hope that these silicone tips, I mean, you'd hope they'd last longer than one component, wouldn't you? That's not very good. I'm going to have to use my solenoid as a bit of a crowbar. So just for comparison, let's try the old solder sucker again. So I've just sucked a big glob of solder up there, and I have come across that common problem that when I try and press a plunger, there's obviously so much solder in here now. It did expel then, but often it gets jammed in there and it's really hard to expel. So that is a common problem with this particular type. Now, having just compared the two solder suckers, I don't actually think there's a huge amount in it. My old faithful here seems to work okay. I think that this one is slightly more powerful. That could be that, you know, it's brand new out the box as opposed to probably getting on for 15 years old like this RS one is. So this old RS solder sucker has certainly stood the test of time. Will this last 20 years? I don't know, but it feels like it's a quality product. It's all nicely machined and anodized. It certainly has a high vacuum on it. It really does. When you fire it, it does go off with some force. Does it suck any better than the old solder sucker? It's too close to call. But one thing I would say that I do really like about it is, although I think that these silicone tips may wear more quickly because they are so much softer, I think that's an advantage. If I was a bit worried about damaging the board, I think I would be less worried using this one. Even though it's got more percussion, even though it kind of bounces more, it has more recoil than this one. Because I think it has more recoil because it's faster, you know, it pumps faster, it's a lot faster. So it has more recoil, it jumps more. The fact that this silicone nozzle is just soft silicone rubber, I actually think that's quite a big advantage, and I think it's less likely to damage your circuit board. So I'm going to give this a thumbs up in my little product review. So there you go, the Japanese SS-02 solder sucker. Sorry I couldn't drag this out to a 45-minute product review, but at the end of the day it's a bloody solder sucker, what do you expect? So I've got here another radio kit. Let's have a quick look at what comes in the kit. Little telescoping aerial. Oh, that's quite cute. We've got, oh, that must be, what do you call that, a scale? What do they call it? A dial? What do you call it, a dial? What do you call that? A graticule? I don't know. You know what it is. It's one of them things that indicates what frequency you're on. We've got a circuit board, which is, that could actually be gold plated, I'm not sure. Might be a gold plated board. It's made out of that kind of Bakelite phenolic resin stuff. It's not FR4. Comes with a case, and it looks as though it takes two AA batteries. Nice little case there. What else have we got? Little 8-ohm speaker. That seems quite nasty. 8-ohm at 0.5 watts. That's a bit horrid. I'm guessing that would stick on there. And, well, it comes with all the bits to make a radio. Okay, I can see a tuning capacitor there, a little multi-gang capacitor. what do they call those tuning capacitors? They used to have a certain brand or a certain name, didn't they, those variable capacitors they use on radios? I'm trying to think, was it... I know that Toco was the little tuning coils that they use, you know, in the IFs, but what did they call capacitors? They definitely had a name, didn't they? I can see a piece of red plastic in there, so that's obviously the tuning pointer. I can see some capacitors, I can see an LED, I can see a coil of wire which looks as though it's designed to go on a little ferrite rod, which I can see in there. I can see various ceramics, I can see some ICs, I can see an earphone jack and one of those flatform flatform potentiometers for the volume control. So we've got a bag of bits there. So just having a look at the case here, it does actually say it's an FM AM radio. It's a 2-band radio. I didn't know that when I bought it. Again, I think I paid about £3 for this, and that included postage from China. There's quite a few websites and a few other people building these on YouTube. So if you can't wait to watch me build it, go and Google kit building radios. I keep telling you, don't I? I always tell you how much I enjoy building kits. And I think I've got 3 or 4 of these kit radios, and I'm planning on maybe building them all over Christmas, and then we maybe have a little bit of a shoot off between them, see which one works best, or see which one works least awfully. So just having a quick look at the circuit diagram here, I think it's effectively one of those 1-chip solution radios, although it has got 2 chips on it. So I think this uses this IC1, this 9088. I seem to think that is isn't that a knockoff, the Chinese version of something like... There was another FM receiver chip that was very commonly used in radios, these miniature radios. I was going to say it was the 808, the 8088 chip. Certainly the last 2 numbers were the same, 88, or was it 7088? But basically this is a common 1-chip radio solution. So you can see it does all the IFs and it does all that kind of thing on a single chip. And then it looks like at the end of here we've got just some form of audio amplifier, and I can see that we've got a headphone jack there, there's a speaker, and then we've got something else up here which I'm not exactly sure what that's doing. It looks as though, I don't know if that's the only thing that's doing that, it looks as though it puts a light on, so I'm guessing that maybe when it's tuned to an FM station, not exactly sure, that just looks as though maybe... Is that taking a sample of audio? That looks like it's taking some audio out and smoothing it, and maybe when it gets to a certain threshold putting an LED on. I'm guessing that's some form of a channel indicator light. Maybe it's based on signal strength, or maybe it's based on FM quietening. It might be when the audio level drops that this light comes on. Who can tell? We'll have to have a look at that. So there we go, a very cheap and nasty kit radio from China that cost about £3. So that should be some fun. We'll build that up over Christmas. So we've got another of those fancy boxes from RS. I wonder if there's any instructions for the correct way to open this, because I'm sure I just made a complete cock of the last one I opened. I can't see any instructions. There's some up arrows here, so I'm meant to do something with these up arrows. I think there might be some form of wave. I think that's meant to tear off across there, but the problem is the label they put on it stops it from doing that. Let's have another go from this side, maybe I'll make a better job of it. Oh, come on RS, I need instructions on how to open your box. Ah! I wasn't expecting that. So I've just opened this bag to find some 100 ohm resistors, and there's some of those carbon composite resistors that look really old fashioned. Probably quite good to use these carbon composites if you're restoring an old vintage radio and you want the resistors to look as crap as the original ones are. You can install these carbon composites. I quite like them. I might start specifying them for whenever I do valve radios and stuff like that. The only problem with them is they are a little bit more expensive, but I guess if it's a love project it doesn't matter. Now I'm sure you all remember that just last week I was playing with this Midland 3001 radio, and I said I wasn't really sure whether or not I was going to recap it or not, because I said, well, I'm not sure, and a few of you commented that I really should. I think Scott Depom told me to recap it. I think Graham said recap it. In fact, I think the majority of you left comments and said I should recap it, and some people said that in the trade they wouldn't even have a go at realigning it until all the capacitors had been done, just as a matter of course. Basically I followed your advice, and I've now gone out to RS and spent, what you see here is £80 worth of capacitors. So as far as I'm concerned, thanks very much guys. Christmas is cancelled. The wife is definitely only going to get an orange for Christmas or a piece of string, because yeah, Christmas is cancelled, so she's going to be really pleased at that. I don't think I've ever seen so many capacitors. Certainly never bought as many as this before. Now I actually decided to buy more than I normally do. I was looking at the economic order quantity and I thought, well, if I'm going to be doing more of these kind of CBs and radios in the future, and I think I might be, because to be honest I'm quite enjoying it. I thought rather than, you know, having to constantly place orders for capacitors, I would actually just take the plunge and buy, well, quite a few of them. So pretty much all of these, apart from those that were big and expensive. I've got 10 of them. What are they? I think they're 1000 microfarad. Yeah, they're 1000 microfarad. And all the others that I bought are various values. What are them? Let me see if I can see through the packaging. They're 220 microfarad. And I bought them all at kind of a higher voltage than I probably need. I mean, I assume that I'm only going to use these mainly in 12 volt portable sets and stuff like that. So I just took a guess that a 35 volt capacitor was probably going to be suitable. But the other reason I went for a higher voltage level is because when you go to a certain voltage level, the lead spacing goes a bit higher. Because some of these capacitors, if you looked at them in like, I don't know, 16 volts, they were absolutely tiny, and they wouldn't have fitted the circuit board. The lead spacing was too narrow. So I actually made a point of getting a higher volt. That's part of the reason I bought the higher voltage capacitors, because I thought they were more likely to match the lead pitch on the capacitors that I was going to remove. I'm sure some of them won't, and I'll have to just bend them and force them in, but yeah, who cares. So we've got some 33 microfarad capacitors, 35 volt, some 100 microfarad, 35 volt, 10 microfarad, 35 volt, 220, 35 volt, and 47 microfarad, 35 volt. So I'm guessing here that these are the 1 microfarad. So they're 1 microfarad at 63 volt, because I say the 1 microfarad ones are absolutely microscopic in 16 volt version. And there's the 1000 microfarads at 25 volts. I only bought 10 of these. I didn't buy as many because, well, because they're expensive. They were a lot more expensive then, so I didn't buy as many.